There are, to my thinking, two ways to build an open-world game. One is as a checklist of incomplete activities, with a few marked in a different color to denote their status as mainline story beats. The other way focuses more on genuine exploration and discovery, foregoing the clutter of map markers and instead counting on the player to ask, "What's over there?" The Pathless goes so far as to not even have a map. This game is built from the ground up to be, well, pathless. Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen is a deeply discovery-driven game, and may have laid some of the groundwork for this second category. I have unfortunately not played Shadow of the Colossus, though its lack of non-boss enemies and subtitles for a made-up fantasy language make it seem like the closest analog for the Pathless. I tried playing Breath of the Wild, but couldn't push past the beginning to see what everybody loved about that game. I am going to do my best not to discuss Elden Ring, but it and Outer Wilds are two more recent releases that share a unique structure with the Pathless. This is going to be tricky to explain, but let's start at the conceptual level. These games have three components that I believe create a distinctive sort of flow state. Genuine exploration and discovery, the ability to plan that exploration, and some disruptive or chaotic element that forces those plans to change. These components combine to make each player's path through the experience truly their own. Relying on the environment itself instead of map markers to communicate to the player which locations are valuable makes for true mystery and revelation at the diegetic level. In Outer Wilds especially, the surface of a planet will be devoid of interesting structures, except where there is something to be discovered. The Pathless's landscape also speaks in this subconscious language of value, and if there is ever any doubt, the spirit visor will reveal a red glow surrounding undiscovered importance. In this way, the environment is the map, especially when there is no map. Just by climbing up high and looking around, or hovering over the surface of a planet, you are able to assess where the untapped wealth is, and plan how to unearth it. This planning is a crucial element in creating a sense of investment and ownership. Not only is your path unique, it is unique because of choices that you have made. And then, on the way to executing the plan, something happens that disrupts you. This final, chaotic ingredient is easy to overlook, but its importance cannot be overstated. Some open worlds try to inject this spontaneity by adding some random activities that you can just come across on the way to something else. Others, like Elden Ring, focus on making sure that you just don't know what to expect over the next fold in the landscape. Outer Wilds and The Pathless, however, each have a specific mechanic whose sole purpose is to disrupt your plans. So, you've climbed up somewhere high, and you can see all the places you need to visit. You say to yourself, okay, so if I hit those three things over to the right on my way to that tower, then I'll have enough light stones for it, and then you're on your way over there when the storm containing the area's boss moves right over there. You might just walk into it and do the whole storm sequence to make it go somewhere else. Or you might decide to go somewhere else instead. Or you might run halfway across the map when the storm is actually chasing you, so you end up, again, somewhere else. Outer Wilds achieves a similar effect by having the time loop start over every 22 minutes, forcing you to reset, reconsider, and replan how and where to engage the threads of the mystery this time around. This storm is a dynamic, plan-changing element like the shrinking ring in a battle royale. It forces what would otherwise be a predictable, static situation to become chaotic. Instead of just going down the list of incomplete map markers, this is a world that needs to be actively contended with to root out its secrets. And what are these secrets? Well, in Outer Wilds, the primary currency is information. Information unravels the mystery of the time loop you are caught up in, while revealing how to access other locations. The Pathless also only has one currency, and it is the ability for the hunter to traverse this island. She begins the game with a bow, which is part of one of the coolest traversal systems I have ever seen. Shooting a talisman provides a temporary boost of speed while adding to the sprint meter. It will also do the equivalent of a double jump when you're in the air. There is no element of clunky controller accuracy getting in the way here. The system is based entirely on timing, contributing to the silky smooth flow that draws you onwards just to see how long you can keep it up. The hunter will always hit her mark if you charge all the way or exactly halfway. This provides a risk-reward choice if you want to try saving time by risking, well, losing time. This will become more important in boss fights or while doing the minigame where you have to get between 2 points without touching the ground or flapping, which brings us to the other movement system. The hunter's stalwart companion on her journey is the eagle. This is BD1, or if you prefer the movies, R2-D2, an unassuming partner who pulls more than their weight in the plot, in this case, literally. Collecting crystals from chests, or the butterfly speed challenges, or the lanterns that have to be lit in order, or the bells that have to be rung in order, or the statues that need praying to, or the torches that are lit with arrows, or the torches only visible with the spirit visor on that are lit with arrows, or the talismans that are also only visible with the spirit visor on that you just shoot, or the get between these 2 points challenges I just mentioned, will contribute towards getting another flap. I think I got them all. There are also special puzzle locations with really big crystals that give a lot more flap juice. The flaps are, as you might imagine, quite useful for getting around, and they refresh whenever you touch dirt. I finished the game with 11 of them, and I was pretty thorough, so I suspect the total attainable is 12. Unless you can avoid the Godslayer stealing that one that he steals, but that sequence seemed pretty scripted to me. I did not lose any crystals to the storm sequences, but apparently that can happen if you get caught. Anyway, defeating bosses and subsequently finding all the remaining lightstones in an area will reward a whole bunch more crystals, as well as other movement upgrades like glide speed or super flaps, which consume multiple flaps at once, or extra speed from shooting talismans. And so this game beckons you forward, asking you to traverse the world in order to get better at traversing the world, just as Outer Wilds asks you to explore and solve mysteries so that you can find more mystery. This single axis of progression means that nothing is side content and everything is side content, because you can beat the game without any of these upgrades anyway. Much like Outer Wilds, where if you know what to do, you can beat the game in the first loop without filling in any of your ship's log. Like the length of the scarf in Journey, the entire gameplay experience is manifested in one system: traversal. And what a stunning world to traverse. The ear tickling is masterfully handled by Austin Wintory and his cadre of excellent soloists. I am out of my depth in commenting on these matters, but the music is tied to what the hunter is doing at any given moment. Getting some momentum up will trigger more layers of percussion, contributing to the feeling of building energy and excitement that drives you to move as fast as you can across the island. Just chilling somewhere unimportant will eventually cause the music to dwindle to dull yet still enthralling tonalizations. Danger is typically heralded by the brass ensemble, who takes center stage during boss fights. After a boss is defeated, there is actually no music in that area anymore, just pleasant nature sounds. There's a lot to these systems, including specific solo instruments for each boss, and if you're interested, I would recommend Austin Winter's video, where he describes how the music works in the Pathless. It is not as simple as play X track when Y happens. There are multiple layers and seamless transitions. The interactivity of this music means that just as no two playthroughs of this game are the same, everyone's musical experience will also be different. For story beats, our ears are treated to two more typically wonderful performances from Laura Bailey and Troy Baker, providing the fantasy language voices for the protagonist and antagonist, respectively.
Shadow. Javan. Chi Chapir.
Kivator! Shike Kiva Shazu! Jajike!
Kego Karakiva Pao. Shuva. Jajita. Jivasaki.
This duet of discourse between Hunter and Godslayer is the axis about which the Pathless's narrative and thematic elements take shape. The Hunter, described as the last hunter, is first seen sailing to this isle aboard a small, lug-rigged craft. Her garb seems intentionally difficult to place, but I would say it is largely Japanese in style. She does draw her bow in the traditional Japanese fashion, pulling down from above her head, at least when she's standing still, and not showing off her indescribably cool shooting while sliding or shooting while in the air moves. She wears an archery glove to protect the first two fingers of her drawing hand, which is a nice touch. In cutscenes, the mask means that all of her humanity and expression is carried quite capably by her eyes and her body language. Shortly after landing, a spirit visor found in a tomb completes her outfit and her kit. This makes it easier for the hunter to see the things that need hunting for. Light stones and places where crystals can be found produce a red glow. The Eagle Mother doesn't seem to be in very good shape, so we put 3 of what I'm not sure are ever called light stones in-game into 3 of what will later be called obelisks. Having thus brought back the light, we can banish the corruption from the Eagle Spirit. This is the tutorialized template for how we will deal with all the other corrupted spirits in their own zones. After this success, though, the Godslayer shows up to do some more of his favorite hobby, ruining everything. He is certainly dressed like he wants to be an evil god, and that seems to be his goal. The Mask of the Ancients and the Sun Sword give him special powers, and he is also the reason why everything is fucked. Everyone is dead, and all the gods are corrupted. In the nest where the Eagle Mother just died, we find a more real-looking eagle, and are introduced to the best mechanic in the game. Press X to pet, and cleanse the darkness from our feathered friend. We then climb through a tower of relationship-building tutorial puzzles, where we learn how to have the eagle move stuff around. The puzzling is not this game's strongest feature, but it holds up. Unless you've just played another game with a lot of generic puzzling. It is mostly optional anyway, but I chose to be thorough on this playthrough, and there was generally enough variety for me to have a good time. So, the way this works is you explore the area to get enough light stones to activate all 3 obelisks. They require 1 each in the tutorial zone and the forest plateau, and then the final 3 areas require 2 for each obelisk. Probably because the areas are bigger. There are a lot more light stones than that to be found, for reasons I shall explain in a moment, so it is pretty easy to get enough of them. This is where that whole dynamic, plan-changing storm element comes in and forces you onto paths you might not otherwise have taken. Once all of the obelisks are activated, the boss is weakened, and you can glide into the storm to begin the chase sequence. Catching up to the guy is rewarded by shots at the targets on his sides, after which we go to the boss fight arena and have some QTE fun. There is no death, only setbacks, including getting knocked right out of the arena. Successfully avoiding attacks will be rewarded with openings to shoot back. Each boss is a unique puzzle, with some including some more platformy elements. Sauro is probably the most unique. You have to hide from his fire breath while extinguishing the braziers. The only real difficulty here is in figuring out what to do and when in order to get to the next stage. Banishing the corruption means that we get to see and immediately be friends with the true form of each spirit. Cernos of the forest, Sauro of the steppe, Nimue of the plains, Kumo of the tundra. These were the gods of this world before that three-eyed son of a bitch got all self-important and killed them, binding their spirits to his will. Freeing them from this curse will grant us a movement upgrade and their lasting friendship, and open up the path to the next zone. Having dealt with the source of the storm, we are now free to explore the rest of the area at our leisure. Also, the sun is out now, so it's just kinda nice to be there. Collecting all the remaining light stones and socketing them into the pedestal at the boss arena will cause the god's spirit to reappear, leading us on another, much friendlier chase to where their bones came to rest after they were slain. They then give us another upgrade. Cernos' second gift is passive regeneration of the spirit meter, which might be the best upgrade in the game. This is entirely optional content, of course, but I found it refreshing to spend some time in an area now freed from the curse and its storm, before moving on to the next challenge. This is yet another choice which will cause players' paths to diverge. Each zone is scattered with stone tablets and memories of dead people that tell us more about the god of that area and why people worshipped or turned against them, but also reveal a world riven by conflicting factions. There is supposedly this guy called the Pathfinder, who has been recruiting followers to his vision of the one true path, decrying the gods for not giving the people enough guidance. After clearing the forest plateau, the redwood steppe, and the great plains, we must climb to the other side of the mountains. On the way, we are accosted once more by the Godslayer, who, as I mentioned, steals a flap from us. Rude. And says he killed the Tall Ones, also known as the gods, so that he could create the one true path, which they refused to do. In the mountain tundra where Kumo the bear resides, the plot begins to thicken. At the place the Sun Sword was stolen from, there are tablets inscribed with the Pathfinder's last speech to his followers. He says that he thought the Mask of Ancients would reveal the one true path, but instead, it showed him that there is none. He then resolves to forge the path himself, but to do so he will need the Sun Sword and the power given to him by the sacrifice of his followers. He plans to kill the Tall Ones and make the path for the world to follow. In this moment, the Pathfinder became the Godslayer. Also, tablets warn that the Sun Sword's power uses you as much as you use it, and reveal the existence of something called the Moon Bow, which is the only thing powerful enough to counter the Sun Sword. Having made friends with all 4 of Eagle Mother's children, we ascend to the floating isle where she used to roost. The Godslayer intercepts us once more, and upon realizing that our eagle is actually none other than the Eagle Mother reincarnated, breaks our bow and turns her against us. We must find our way past her, truly alone, shivering and exhausted, until we get to a shrine honoring her and her children, our friends. They give the hunter some moral support and the moon bow before she heads up the tower for the final boss fight. It is not too different from the others. Avoiding enough attacks will provide openings to shoot at the guy, and if you do that enough times, you will start up some magic bullshit, at which point you need to shoot each symbol first 1, then 2, then 3 times before he can finish casting whatever it is he's casting. I never got to see it. Little did you know that every talisman you tried shooting at exactly half charge in the open world was actually training for this moment. A risk-reward choice like this is a really cool thing to put into a boss fight, especially when it is a mechanic the player has much experience with. Doing this 3 times activates the 3 obelisks here, just like old times, which weakens the corruption in Eagle Mother. The Godslayer gets big and angry and tries to do something, but instead the hunter takes the corruption into herself, and it's flashback meditation time. This results in getting the whole squad back together so they can all put their power into the moonbow for phase 2. We've got our eagle back, and successfully avoiding attacks allows us to shoot the big man's hands, then his face, then his stomach a whole bunch to stop his ritual. Collapsed, he tries to defend his philosophy one last time.
Kivator. Jajike vaktu mazavafiru.
Masa ke fokus
Va igu mazavak tusul. Jahaz tansenva. Vokara sul jasenva. Sifiru mazuke sha.
As though the battle was one of ideas all along, it is the hunter's words that strike the final blow. The Godslayer is so consumed by his venture to forge the one true path that to know the futility of it is to no longer have a reason to exist. The themes of this game reflect its mechanics. Our journey through this land has been pathless, and this final exchange tells us the value to be had in that, the sad beauty that each person's truth must be their own to discover. Between the lack of quest marker guidance, the randomness of the storms, and the fact that any lightstones from anywhere in the area can be slotted into the obelisks, every playthrough of this game is guaranteed to look different. The only constants are the 3 obelisks and the boss fight in every region. Even speedruns of this game will probably look different every time, depending on where the storms end up. And how much a player chooses to do beyond the bare minimum also creates divergence. Because of all these elements, this final exchange of words has profound meaning for someone who has just forged their own path through one of the most open-ended open worlds out there. The Pathless seems like an arrow aimed at the heart of the debate over open world game design, showing and telling that guidance comes at the cost of that freedom of choice that makes video games their own art form. Perhaps, though, we could take another step back, saying that this is the right way to build an open world would be hypocritical, to say the least. We ought to welcome all approaches and see what they have to offer, because, well, you know, the truth is a pathless land.